Hi everyone, welcome to Maths Decoded. Today I'm solving 9709 February March 2017 paper 1 and variant 2. So let's get started. First question over here reads, find the set of values of k for which the equation 2x squared plus 3kx plus k is equal to 0 has distinct real roots. Now, when a question says that it has real roots, it means that they're talking about the discriminant. And how do you figure out the discriminant? This is a question from the chapter of quadratics, as I've already mentioned over here. And you need to understand the concept of a discriminant. A discriminant is basically b square minus 4ac. I've listed the three possibilities over here. The discriminant can be greater than 0, it can be less than 0, it can be equal to 0. And this depends upon what the question is telling you. If the graph is intersecting the x-axis two times, it's greater than 0, like this. If it's not intersecting even once, it's going to be less than 0, like this. And if it's intersecting just once, only one time, then it's going to be equal to 0, like this. In this question, it says that it has real roots. This means that it's intersecting two times. So I'm going to say that the equation given to us over here, let me write it down. This is the equation of the graph that will be forming. You can see that it will be a quadratic graph because it's a quadratic equation, so it will form a parabola. This is the thing that is called a parabola. So if I try to break this down further, A is going to be 2, B is going to be 3k, and C is going to be k. And if I write down the discriminant that I'm going to be following over here, that's going to be b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0. I'm going to say that b over here is 3k, minus 4a is 2, c is k greater than 0. That's going to leave me with 9k squared minus 8k greater than 0. Now, this over here is a quadratic inequality. It's not an equation, so it has to be solved in a different way. So let's say I can take k common out. That's going to leave me with 9k minus 8 greater than 0. If I take this as an equation, I try to write down the roots. That's going to be k is equal to 0 and k is going to be 0.889. Three significant figures. Acha. So the thing over here is that the way you solve a quadratic inequality is that you can take any value that is coming between your two roots. Let's say I could take 0.5. So if I take 0.5, plug in k is equal to 0.5, that's going to be 9 0.5 square minus 8 into 0.5 greater than 0. Now let's see when I plug in a value that is between my roots. Let's see if the inequality is satisfied this way. If I solve this expression, this is going to come out to be negative 1.75 is greater than 0. Now this is not true. This is not true at all. A negative number cannot be greater than 0. This means that when I put something that was between my roots, the inequality was not satisfied. This means that my real x values are actually out of these two roots. So if I demonstrate it for you in the form of a graph, that's going to be this is 0 and this is 8 by 9. So the inequalities has values that are over here and they are over here. So the final answer will be k is less than 0 and it's greater than 8 by 9. Okay, now moving on to question number 2. It says in the expansion of this expression, the coefficient of x is 5. Find the value of the constant a. Now, this is an equation, the question that is related to the topic of binomial expansion. And in binomial expansion, you need to understand that you have a certain format that is followed across every question. You will have an expression that is given to you that's going to be raised to some power, and you will see that every term in the expression will have NCR with it, NCR, NCR, where C is a constant, 2 is the term, the first, second, third term, and 5 is basically the power that was given to you in the question. So I've written down a basic format. I think that in this particular equation, expression, the coefficient of x is going to come in the third term. So let's check it out. Third term is going to be 5C2 because the first term is 5C0, then it's 5C1, so the third term is 5C2 into the first term 1 plus ax raised to power 3 into 2ax square raised to power 2. You need to make sure one thing over here, that this and this must be adding up to the total power. You can see that even in this example that I've written over here, the value of x, the power of x decreases. Look, it goes from 5 to 4 and then to 3, and the value and the power of y increases. So it was 0 over here, it's 1 now, and then it's 2 over here. So you have to follow this format in every question. So if I just go on further with this is going to be 10 into 1 over a cube x cube into 4a square x 4. Now, I was right. You can see that the coefficient is coming out to be x. And you can also simplify the powers of a. That's going to be like this. That leaves you with 40 over a. Now, this is the coefficient of x, and they told you that the coefficient of x is equal to 5. So I can put this equal to 5. That's going to be 5a is equal to 40. So a is going to be equal to 8. Moving on to question number 3. This question is basically just formula application in the first part at least. It reads, the diagram shows a water container in the form of an inverted pyramid. Um, it has a square base. Find the volume of water in the container in terms of H. So the formula, they've given you the formula of volume, and that they've mentioned in the question that it's a square. So you can, if and it's what is the formula of the area of a square? Area of a square formula is L square. I know the length, where L stands for length. The length is 1 over 2h. So area would be h square over 4. Now I can just plug this in into this. Just move this over there. And h is going to be h. So this is going to come out as 1 over 12 h cube. Now moving on to the third question, second part. Now moving on to the second part of this question, it says water is steadily dripping into the container at a constant rate of 20 centimeter cube per minute. Find the rate in centimeter per minute at which the water level is rising when the height of the water level is 10 centimeter. Now in this question, basically it's a question about rates of change. Rates of change is a topic that derives from differentiations. I'll just write down the formula that we have derived. We have derived V is equal to 1 over 12h cube. Okay, now if I differentiate this expression, that's going to be dV over dH. That's going to be, I'll reduce the power of h and I'll multiply this power over here. So that's going to be 1 over 4 h squared. Okay, now they're telling us to find the rate at which the water level is rising. So whenever they tell you to find out the rate, it means that you have to divide something by time. And in this case, they're talking about the height. So it's the change in height that you'll be dividing by time. This is basically what they want you to find. Now there's a particular format that we follow when we are doing rates of change. You make two fractions like this, and you'll write dh over here, which is the upper value, and the lower value you'll write it down over here. And what is the second term that is related over here? That's volume. You'll fill in the missing spaces with volume, dv and dv. Now you can see that we have already found out this value, which is this. You'll just have to inverse it for it to become dh over dv, because what we found was dv over dh. That's not much of an issue. And dv over dt is something that is already given to you, that is 20. So I can just inverse this. It's h square over 4. So if I inverse that, it's going to become 4 over 8 square. So I can plug this in, 4 over 8 square into, this is given to me over here, the value of this is already given to me over here as 20. I'll write 20. H I know is 10. I'll plug in 10 square into 20, and that's going to give me dH over dt as 0.8. Okay, so moving on to question number 4. This question says that you basically have to find out an angle. This is from the chapter of trigonometry. So let's see what the question says. It says that AB is equal to AC, and angle CAB is given to us. The circular arc BC has a center A. The circular arc CD has center B, and this is a straight line. ABD is a straight line. They want you to find out angle CBD, which is basically this angle over here. Let's see how you can figure this out. So basically, you know that this over here is an isosceles triangle. Why? Because this length and this length are equal. Now, when a triangle has two sides that are equal, it means that it's an isosceles triangle. We know that one of the angles is 2 by 7 rads. Now, make sure when you're doing this question, you are converting your calculator from degrees to radians. Otherwise, your answers will come out to be wrong. I know that the sum of angles in a triangle is equal to 180. 180 in radians is written out to be pi. So I'll say that because it's an isosceles triangle, I'll say that pi minus 2 by 7 pi. Let's see what that gives us. 5 over 7 pi. This means that the sum of these two angles, this angle and this angle, is 5 by 7 pi. So I'll now divide this by 2. And that's going to give me 5 over 14 pi. Now remember, this is the value of this angle and this angle. So I can say that this is equal to angle CBA. They want me to find out angle CBD, and I'm going to find that by saying angle CBD is equal to pi 180, which is minus angle CBA. You can see that if I have this as a straight line, I'll subtract this angle to get this angle. So that's what I'm doing over here. I'll just plug in the value that I found in the last part. Angle CBD as 9 over 14 pi, just as it mentions in the question. So you can write over here, shown. Alright, moving on to the second part, which asks us to find the perimeter of the shaded region. I've just pasted a picture of the question from above to make it easier for us to understand. Um, so this is the shaded region that we are having, and let's try to break it down. So first of all, let's try to find out the perimeter of this arc. This is the easiest one to find. So let's find this out first. I can just label the lines to make it easier for myself, 1, 2, and 3. So first of all, I'm going to find out the perimeter of arc 1. Arc 1, I can use the formula S is equal to arc theta. S is the length of the arc, R is the radius, which is 8, and theta is 2 by 7 pi rads. So I'm just going to find out this value, 16 over 7 pi. I'll just let this be for now and move on to arc number 2. Arc number 2 requires some work. Um, First of all, I can see that I have a sector over here. This is the sector. And in this sector, I need to find out the radius in order to be able to figure out the S. I've already figured out the angle over here, which was figured out in the last part, which was 9 over 14 pi. I can just label it. But I still need to find out the radius. So I can apply something called as, this is what I'm finding out. I can apply the cosine rule on this triangle to figure out CB. So let's try to do that. CB square is going to be equal to 8 square plus 8 square minus 2 into 8 into 8 into 2 by 7 pi rads. Sorry, cos of 2 by 7 pi rads. If I solve it, this is going to come out as 2.6.94. So once I have the radius figured out, I can then again apply s is equal to r theta. That's going to be 6.94 into theta. Theta is 9 over 14 pi rads, 15.01599. I'm writing it to a greater number of significant figures so that there's less error in the actual answer. And when I move on to the third line, I can see that this line dB is going to be equal to CD. Why? Because these both are radiuses, and radius of a sector is always going to remain the same no matter where you take it from. So this is the sector, and both of these lines, dB and CB, are the radius. So dB is actually equal to CB. So dB is also 6.94. Now, if I take the total radius, total, sorry, not radius, perimeter, that's going to be 16 over 7 pi plus 14.01599 plus 6.94. The answer as 28.1, which is the correct answer. Moving on to question number 5. This question is also related to trigonometry, but it's more about the graphs. So let's have a look. The diagram shows the graphs of y is equal to tan x is equal to cos x. For this range, the graphs intersect at points A and at point B. Find by calculation the x coordinate of A. Now you know one thing that in order to find a point of intersection, you put the equations of the graphs together, and you can see that A is a point of intersection. So in order to find a point of intersection, you will see that it is formed by these two graphs, y is equal to tan x and y is equal to cos x. So if I do y is equal to y, that's going to be tan x is equal to cos x. You are aware about the identity sin x over cos x is equal to tan x. So I can, instead of tan x, I can write sin x over cos x is equal to cos x. This is going to turn out to be sin x is equal to cos square x. And I know that this can also be written as 1 minus sine square x. This is also another identity. So if I bring this on the other side, that's going to be sine square x plus sine x minus 1 is equal to 0. Now, in order to make it easier for myself to solve this quadratic equation, I'm going to say that sine x is equal to m. That's going to be m squared plus m minus 1 is equal to 0. You can just put this into your calculator, or you can use the quadratic formula to solve it. That is negative b plus minus b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. I can say that a over here is 1, b over here is also 1, and c over here is negative 1. So I can just plug these values in, negative 1 plus minus b1, a is 1, c is negative 1, divided by 2 into 1. It's going to give me two values of m that are 0.61803 and negative 1.6180. So next what we'll do is that I can write down what m originally was. It was sine x. That's equal to 0.61803 and sine x is negative 1.6180. 0.6180. So if I just take the inverse of this, that's going to be 0.61803. X is going to come out to be 0.666 to three significant figures. And make sure that you're still dealing with this question in radians because you're doing trigonometry. Okay, now moving on to the second part, it says that find the coordinates of B. You can see that B basically lies in the second quadrant, and in the second quadrant, you need to remember that the second quadrant is basically 180 minus the basic angle. The basic angle is something that we've already figured out in the part above. The basic angle was 0.66. So that's what I'll do over here as well. But remember that we're dealing with radians, so it's not going to be 180, it's going to be pi. 2.4753. I can round this off to three significant figures. That's going to be 2.47, 2.48. Three significant figures. Now it doesn't only ask for the x coordinate, it also asks for the y coordinate. So I'll just plug this back into the graph that is given to us. I can plug it into this. So that's going to be y is equal to cos of 2.48. That gives us negative 0.786. So we can write down the answer as 2.48 comma negative 0.786 as the coordinates of y. Okay, so moving on to question number 6. This is a question about vectors, which is no longer part of the syllabus, so we're not going to be solving this. Instead, we're going to move on to the next question, that is question number 7. This question reads, the function f is defined for x is greater than 0 by f of x is equal to this expression. Find f prime of x and f double prime of x. So this is basically the first derivative and this is the second derivative. So let's get started with it. We just have to do simple differentiation over here. F prime of x is going to be equal to, I'm going to multiply the constant towards the starting of the expression. I'm going to write down the bracket as it is, and I'm going to reduce the power by 1, so that's going to become 0.5 or 1 over 2. Remember over here what I've applied is simply chain rule, but it's not done as yet. You're also going to write down the derivative of this expression inside. That's going to be 4. This is going to leave you with 6 4x plus 1 raised to power 1 over 2. Now let's find out the second prime of this expression. That's basically going to be a derivative of this expression. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 6 into 1 over 2 into 4x plus 1 negative 1 over 2 into 4. 4 is the derivative of the expression inside. So that's going to leave me with 12 4x plus 1 raised to power negative 1 over 2. These are the two answers that we get. Moving on to the next part. The first, second, and third terms of a geometric progression are respectively f of 2, f prime of 2, and k f double prime of 2. So let's try to figure out these expressions one by one. Sabse pehle I'm going to figure out f of 2. That's basically going to be uh, 2 inputted into the actual equation. Raised to power 3 over 2. So if I just calculate this, that's going to be 9 raised to power 3 by 2, which is 27. Now let's figure this one out. That is going to be 18 And the last one is kf double prime of 2. That means k is multiplied with this entire expression. So that would be 12 into 4 into 2 plus 1 raised to power negative 1 by 2, leaving us with 4k. Now basically they're telling us that these terms are basically in the form of a geometric progression. Geometric progressions basically have ratios. So something they're either being divided or multiplied by a certain factor. Let's see what the factor is over here. You can see that this is divided by 1.5. So I'll just write it down in a fraction form. 27 over 18 will be equal to 18 over 4k. That's going to be 108k is equal to 324. So k is going to be equal to 3. Moving on to question number 8. This is a question about functions. At least the first part is. It says that find g f of x is equal to 6x squared plus 11. So you have to show this. Now this is basically something called a composite function. This is a composite function. This means a function within a function. So you over here the rule that we follow is that the function that is written outside is the one in which another function is being inserted into. So g of x will be written like this. In place of x, I'll put a big bracket plus 2 is equal to g f of x. And inside the bracket, I'll put f of x. That's going to be 2x squared plus 3. That's going to leave me with 6x squared plus 9 plus 2 is equal to g f of x. And that's going to be 6x squared plus 11 is equal to g f of x. Shown, just as the question says. Okay, now it also tells us to find an unsimplified expression for f of g of x, which is basically the inverse of what we did over here. Now we'll be putting g of x inside f of x. So to do that, the method will be the same. I'll put bracket in place of x with a square on top of it plus 3, and inside the bracket I'll put g of x. You can leave your answer like this, or you can simplify it further. But I'm going to leave it like this because we're going to use this in the next part as well. Find an expression for the inverse of this and determine the domain. So let's see how we can find the inverse of this. Whenever you're finding the inverse, first of all, you need to remember to write y is equal to f of x. And in this case, you'll write y is equal to this. So I write y is equal to 2, 3x plus 2 whole square plus 3. Now remember one thing, whenever you have to take the inverse of a quadratic equation, this is a quadratic equation as you can see, make sure that it's in the completed square form. You won't be able to take the inverse if you're using the simplified form. Make sure that it's in the completed square form. So now the next step when you're taking an inverse is that you're going to replace the x values for the y values and the y values for the x values. So I'm going to write x is equal to 2, 3y plus 2 whole square plus 3. I'll do x minus 3 divided by 2 is equal to 3y plus 2 whole square. To eliminate the whole square, I'm going to take a square root on both sides. This gets eliminated. That's going to be 3y plus 2 is equal to square root of x minus 3 divided by 2. Um, Next up is going to be that I'll just shift. I have to make y the separable formula. So I'll just shift everything else to the other side. Minus 2 divided by 3. You can also write it like y is equal to 1 over 3 square root of y minus 2 y minus 3 actually, x minus 3 divided by 2 minus 2 divided by 3. And in the last step, you're again going to reverse the y values for the x values and the x values for the y values. So that would be 1 over 3 square root of y minus 3 divided by 2 minus 2 over 3. Remember, because it's a square root, the answer can be plus minus, so we have to mention that over here. We're just going to write as the question states us to write it down. Plus minus 1 over 3 square root of y minus 3 divided by 2 minus 2 over 3. Okay, now moving on to finding the domain of the inverse of f of g of x. Now we know that the domain of fg inverse is equal to the range of fg of x. And this is a general rule that we follow in functions. First of all, we're going to say that we're going to input x is equal to 0. Why are we taking x is equal to 0? Because when x is equal to 0, that is when we can figure out the y-intercept. So if I put x is equal to 0 into g of x, that's going to be 3 into 0 plus 2. So that's going to leave g of x is equal to 2. Then I'm going to input this value into f of x. So f of g of x is going to be equal to 2 square plus 3. That's going to be 11. And you know that the graph that's going to be forming is basically going to be something like this. You can see that the y values over here are increasing. So you can say that f of g of x is going to be greater than or equal to 11. Therefore, and this is basically the range. You have to find out the domain, and you know that the range of this is basically going to be equal to the domain of this. So I'll just write it down as x is greater than or equal to 11. Okay, now moving on to part 3. I've rewritten these equations over here from the first part that we figured out. So basically it says that in this equation we're going to plug in, instead of x, we're going to plug in 2x. So let's see how that will work. 2x whole square plus 11, and it says that this is equal to this part of the expression. That's going to be 3x plus 2 whole square plus 3, and this is going to leave us with 6 into 4x square plus 11 is equal to 9x square plus 12x plus 4 plus 3. 24x square plus 11 is equal to 18x square plus 24x plus 8 plus 3. And then this leaves us with 6x square minus 24x is equal to 0. I can take x common out. I can in fact take I can take x common out. That's going to leave me with 6x minus 24 is equal to 0. So x is going to be equal to 0 and 6x is going to be equal to 24. So x is going to be equal to 4. So x is either 0 or 4. Okay, now moving on to question number 9. This is again related to differentiation. In these questions, it's very important that you try to visualize the question in a graphical form. So it says that the point A 2 comma 2 lies on the curve y is equal to x square minus 2x plus 2. So it's a quadratic equation. So you'll have a parabola in your graph. Find the equation of the tangent to the curve at A. Now you need to understand that your graph is going to be looking something like this. And let's say this is the point A and this is the tangent at A. So they need you to figure out the equation of this tangent. So in order for us to do that, we first have to figure out the derivative of this equation over here. That's going to be dy over dx, that's equal to 2x minus 2. Now inside of this, I will plug in the x coordinate that is given to us, that is 2. So if I plug that in, that's going to be 2. So m is 2. The slope of this line is equal to 2. And therefore, I can use the general line equation y equals mx plus c. I know that y is 2 is equal to m is also 2, x is also 2 minus c. That's going to be 2 is equal to 4 minus c. So c is also going to be 2. That's going to leave me with final equation y is equal to 2x minus 2. Moving on to part 2, it says the normal to the curve at A intersects the curve again at B. Find the coordinates of B. So I've drawn a visual of this entire scenario over here, and what they basically want you to find out is this coordinate over here. So in order for us to do that, first of all, we have to figure out the equation of the normal. The equation of the normal is going to be pretty simple. The m of tangent was 2, so m of normal is going to be the negative reciprocal, that is negative 1 over 2. That would be y is equal to negative 1 over 2x plus c. Y is 2 and x is also 2, the coordinates of A. So that would be 2 is equal to minus 1 plus c. C would be equal to 3. That would leave us with y is equal to negative 1 over 2x plus 3. Now that we have the equation of um, normal, we will basically put it equal to the equation of this graph, because you can see that B is basically a point of intersection between this graph and between this line. We have the equations of both of these curve and the graph, so we can put them together and figure out the point of intersection. So that would be negative 1 over 2x plus 3 is equal to, what was the original equation? It was x square minus 2x plus 2. So that would be x squared minus 3 over 2x minus 1 is equal to 0. I can multiply this entire thing with 2 to eliminate the fraction, and that would leave me with 2x squared minus 3x minus 2 is equal to 0. You can just put this entire thing into your calculator. Um, or you can also manually solve it out. So a is equal to 2, b is equal to minus 3, and c is equal to minus 2. So you can use the formula minus b plus minus b square minus 4ac divided by 2a. When you input all of these values into this formula, you will get two uh, answers, negative 1 over 2 and 2. You will reject this value because this is already the coordinate of a was 2 comma 2, right? So this one is going to be rejected, this is one is going to be accepted, and then you will basically put negative 1 over 2 into the original equation that we found out, and that's going to be giving you 3.25. So your final answer is going to be the coordinates of b, negative 1 over 2 and 3 whole 1 over 4. Okay, now moving on to part 3 of this question. It tells you to find the coordinates of C, and it also tells you that the tangents at A and B intersect each other at C. So you basically have to find out the equations of tangent A and then of tangent B, and then you put them together. I've already solved this question for you. So the equation of tangent A we already found in the part above, and B is what we actually have to find. So I know that the derivative of the actual equation that was given to us was 2x minus 2. I'll plug in the coordinates of the x coordinate of b that we found in the part above over here, negative 0.5. I'll plug this into my derivative. This will give me the gradient of tangent b, which comes out to be minus 3. Now I know the gradient, and I also know the coordinates of b, so I can easily figure out the equation. I plug this in, then I find the value of C, and I can then figure out the equation of the tangent to B. And then basically I'll just put this equation with this equation and figure out the points of intersection. I just put them together. It becomes 5x equals 15 over 4, and then that simplifies to x is equal to 3 over 4. Then this 3 over 4 I'll plug back into this equation to get the y coordinate, and that comes out to be negative 0.5. So you can just write down the coordinates of um, C. These are the coordinates of C. I don't know why I wrote B over here. It's actually C. Okay, now moving on to question number 10. This is the last question in this paper. It says the diagram shows this curve defined for x is greater than 0. The curve has a minimum point at A and it crosses the x-axis at B and C. This means that B and C are the x-intercepts in this case. And they've already given you the equation, but they've given you the derivative of the actual equation of the graph, and it passes through this point. Find the x coordinate of A. You know that A is a minimum point, and for the minimum point, the derivative is always going to be equal to 0. Derivative is already given to us, so we'll just put it equal to 0 over here. This, I'll take 2x on the other side. It leaves us with this. I'll divide 2 by 2, that's 1. So x basically turns out to be 1 for the A, for A over here. Moving on to the second part, it says find f of x. So basically, you were given the derivative and you have to go to the original equation. To do that, you need to basically integrate this expression. So if you try to do that, you'll write the integral sign over here, that 2x minus 2 over x cubed. You'll raise the powers of x and divide that by the original expression. So when I integrate it, I will get something like this. But you also have to remember that integration always has a plus c inside it. So I'll plug this x and y coordinates into my equation. This is the value of y, this is the value of x, so that I can find the value of C, and then finally you can see this is the final equation that I get. Okay, moving on to part 3 of this question, it says find the x coordinates of B and C. As I discussed above, B and C are basically x-intercepts, and when you have an x-intercept, basically means that the y coordinate is 0. So I will just take this equation that I found out over here and plug in the y coordinate as 0. So that's what I've done over here. In order to eliminate the fractions, I multiplied this entire expression by 4x squared. So that gives me a simpler quadratic equation to solve. I can see that this is a quadratic equation in disguise. Um, I basically did middle term breaking over here. I factorized this expression, and these are the two brackets that I'll get. And I put them equal to 0, so x basically comes out to be 2, and it comes out to be 1 over 2. 1 over 2 is going to be b because it's the smaller value, and 2 is going to be c because it's the greater value. Okay, moving on to the last part of this question, it says find showing all necessary working the area of the shaded region. Now, I've copy pasted the question over here again. Um, Whenever you have to find out the shaded region, which is over here, you need to make sure that you are figuring out the x limits. The x limits over here are 2 and 1 over 2. These are the limits that basically enclose the shaded region. So I'll have to basically take the original equation of this graph, which is this, and I have to integrate this expression. So when I integrate it, it comes out to be something like this. But remember that over here, you now have to write down the limits as well, so which is 2 and 0.5. Once I integrate it, I will then shift to square brackets and then write 2 and 0.5. First, I'll plug in 2 into this equation, which I've done over here, and then I'll subtract it from the value that I get when I input 0.5 into this equation. So first I input 0, then I input 0.5, and then I subtract both of these values, and then the answer that I get over here is 9 over 4. This was the last question that we had. I hope this video was helpful to you.